right, so we're gonna move into pack one, pick one here, and
Is that a
anything.
tinker?
Ooh, all right, I like it. I like what I see. Yeah, I like this too. I was gonna say Swords to Plowshares is another card that I'm personally very attached to. Swords to Plowshares, just like a legacy staple. But it seems like you immediately saw the Tinker.
Oh yeah, I love artifacts. The two cards that really pop out to me are the Tinker and the Mishra's Workshop, but Tinker is just so good.
Okay. Yeah. Mishra's Workshop, also vintage only card. I mean, it's very, very powerful. It's one of those cards that I personally don't know. I haven't mastered Workshop in like draft. So I kind of just default to Swords to Plowshare. It's a kind of card that's like good at all stages of the game here, but it is pack one, pick one. You really can't go wrong if you select one of the high power cards here, right?
Yeah, personally, I like to just go for the highest power thing that I can be doing. If you're going to tinker, you can put a Blightsteel Colossus or a Portal to Phyrexian to play pretty early. Swords to Plowshare is great. You can't really go wrong. It's always going to be good. You can play it in just about any deck that can cast it.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then thinking about things like what might happen when this pack returns to Reid, any other notables that have caught your eye?
Maybe, well, the pack just disappeared. There's a lot of mid-range cards, so it's not like we're going to probably get nothing out of the pack, but there's nothing particular that pops out that'll wheel.
Okay. Yeah. Here I feel like it's a little bit different. There's one card here that is significantly better than the rest.
Yeah, I think Necromancy actually also has a argument, but Fourth Lingus, if you already took the Swords to Plowshares, just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a shoe-in, right? I mean, the other card that I see kind of here is Hollowed Fountain, but I kind of just feel like the raw power of Fourth Lingus is a card this early into the draft that you cannot afford to ignore, right? Like this card solos games by consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. You can cast it as early as turn 2 if you have a 1-drop and just take that Monarch. If your opponent is unable to defend from that, you're just gonna out-card them pretty fast.
Yep.
It's like
Yeah.
a little Library of Alexandria on a stick in that case.
Yeah, just like the modern day version of that, if you will. I think what's really cool about Fourth Lingus too is that it's the kind of card, like what makes it so powerful is, I mean, yes, it can fireball your opponent, but you could also play it early in the game to sort of start generating that advantage.
Wow, so Palace Jailer is a great follow-up here, I think. You have everything that you're drafting is going toward wanting to play this, like, mid-range snowball board advantage plan,
Yeah.
and Palace Jailer fits perfectly into that.
I'm just keeping track of Strip Mine is another card that, makes me, it gives me the good brain chemicals, if you will. But I think
Yes.
Palace Jailer combined with the Swords to Plowshares, the Fourth Lingus, is, the raw power of this card is really good.
You have to be actually, you can kind of know that the person you're passing to is likely taking the Tinker, and then they're gonna be taking the Strip Mine, so you can get an idea of sort of how you're gonna get fed in the next pack too.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
because you're going into this snowball board presence strategy and also passing Tolarian Academy here, it's a good way of setting yourself up for pack 2 because the person you're passing to is gonna be looking for completely different cards. They're gonna be wanting the artifact stuff, they're gonna be wanting things for Tinker payoffs, and they're not gonna be able to take away your good white cards.
Yeah, that's excellent. Sort of the strategy of just figuring out like not what you're playing, but also what other people might be playing is very important. Your plateau kind of a slam dunk here. Maybe there's a world where you consider the Burgi, but that if that comes back only then, I think plateau really good there. Yeah.
I think that Tolarian Academy is, like, individually powerful enough that if we didn't have such a good start, it would be completely reasonable to just pivot.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, you would be competing with the person that you're passing to, which isn't necessarily bad. In this case, you'd be hooking them, so you wouldn't get fed in pack 2, but then in pack 3, you would get fed. That's sort of how it works.
All right. Looking at this pack, nothing really stands out to me. I mean, the only white card is what Leyline Binding here. Is that good enough?
It's fine. I think in years previous, Bribery would be a slam dunk, but that card has just diminished in value over the years.
Okay,
I
fair
think
enough.
the boomer in me would still take Bribery, just I can't shake how good it used to be. It's imprinted on me.
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Leyline Binding right now, like red, white, it's like a glorified Faith's Fetters, I guess, almost. And so I could see maybe like using this pack as an opportunity to like hedge for other options. But looks like Reid is going to go for the Leyline Binding here. And honestly, the first few packs here, this is looking very nice.
I think that the binding might have even tabled if he'd wanted to take something else, but there wasn't really anything that stays the course for him there. Taking Intrepid Adversary over Gristlebrand is that's definitely you're trying to create cooperative table mates here because I have trouble passing cards that are as powerful as Gristlebrand when I'm only getting something like Intrepid Adversary, which is a fine card, but it's sort of like filler.
Okay. Yeah. So
Whereas like
you're still
Gristlebrand, you can build a whole strategy around, and I'd be worried that I'd be like giving my opponents too much.
too much value. Yeah, yeah. That's interesting because I think Reid is clearly cementing into this very, like, I would even say like a mono white sort of style of games here. But you're saying that even at this stage, you're willing to play like pretty flexibly despite the picks that you've got, right? And I think that's actually really cool.
Well, I don't think that you're necessarily tied into drafting like mono white just because your cards are white. Like all of these cards work well, basically no matter what your deck is, as long as you can cast them. So fixing his mana and just like being more open is definitely a strategy that could work. This also could work to his advantage as well because it's basically telling the person you're passing to you're not going to get good white cards because none have gone through him.
Gotcha. Yeah. We saw Zerta the Dawnwaker was picked up there. This is a companion that is so strong that it's banned in our Eternal formats. Reid is going to pick it up here. What are the couple combos that we have with Zerta?
Zerta is pretty much its only function is to generate infinite mana with one of the monoliths, either Grim Monolith or Basalt Monolith, because it reduces the activation cost to less than the amount of mana that the card produces.
Okay. And I like this too. There's also Get Lost. This is a new card from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and this is a pretty diverse white removal spell. Destroys creatures, enchantments, and planeswalkers. The trade-off is that your opponent will get the two map tokens, but really nice inclusion here in the cube.
Yeah, I think Get Lost is comparable to Swords to Plowshares, and in a lot of ways, it's maybe even better because it hits planeswalkers and enchantments. And the downside of giving your opponent map tokens, like a lot of decks don't even have creatures that they can reasonably use on the maps, so you're getting like a lot of just intrinsic value from that.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is interesting. We saw Reid originally highlighted the Recruiter of the Guard. Being able to curve like Recruiter into Palace Jailer is super cool, but eventually goes with the Savannah. Any reason for that?
I think just opening yourself up to maybe opening like a Minkskin Boo or any of the other good like splash cards.
Okay, fair enough. I also see the synergy there with like Leyline Binding to sort of, improve the power of that card. Please, Reid, I'm asking you one time, don't take the Phyrexian Revoker. All right. So this clearly we're playing Death and Taxes here at this point.
Revoker's good. I like Revoker. I think one of the things that Revoker shines at is it doesn't have an impressive body, but the best decks you're going to play against will have Moxes or Black Lotus or something, and turning those cards off is really important.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying I have no qualms with Phyrexian Revoker, except the number of times that it has turned off my Sensei's Divining Top. So you can tell it's clearly personal there.
Reid is, he passed Tinker, so I don't know. I guess you can't really hate the Tinker drafter. They're going to get something good here, but it's scary to be passing 2 premium Tinker targets that late.
Okay. I also like that, right? Because I one of the things that I'm not particularly skilled at when it comes to draft is remembering like all 45 cards, or all 360 cards that you see here, as this pack is going to round out, so it's good that you're being observant of that. And I mean, honestly, this will also maybe dictate some of the cards that we're taking later on. If we plan to play against a Tinker player, how do we want to potentially mitigate something like the Blightsteel that we just saw that we gave to the Tinker player right next door to us?
Well, fortunately, we've got Palace Jailer, Leyline Binding, Unexpectedly Absent, Source to Plowshares. I don't think Reid is actually super concerned with his opponent tinkering. Maybe if they got a Portal to Phyrexia, that would be problematic.
Ooh, Balance? Okay. That's a card I like.
Oh, yeah. Balance is a very good card.
Although it does kind of feel like the way this deck is shaping up so far, it's not exactly the best balanced deck.
Yeah, you tend to not want to have your own creatures, and you want to have cards like equipment, talismans, things that you can put into play that you don't have to sacrifice to reduce your hand size.
Okay.
However, I feel like Balance is just so strong that you can play it in any deck and then orchestrate situations where it's going to blow your opponent out.
We saw last week, Ely Cassis had a really cool balance deck that leveraged, cards like Chrome Mox. Sorry, I got to cut myself off here. Please. Not the okay, Revoker I can get behind, but if we're literally playing Thalia
is a great card, and as much as I hate it, like personally, because I want my spells to cost the regular amount, and making me pay more for them is rude. I think that it's a good pick.
There's a single tear that is just like slowly going down my face there.
I
Ballista is
would
another.
take Ballista here, honestly, though. We
Okay,
have
okay, cool.
Zerda, so having like the way to generate infinite mana if we get either the Monoliths and then having the Ballista as a payoff is really nice. We're in white, so we could get Heliod for infinite damage with the Ballista. I think
Yep.
Ballista would have been a good pick.
I like that a lot too. Yeah, I Ballista was kind of interesting for me to. I mean, mostly because like in refusing to draft the Thalia, I'm like, what else is there in this pack? And
Yeah,
Ballista
that's
does.
what I was thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
We're of one mind. Thalia is mean.
So this is interesting. I see Arid Mesa is the pick here for Reid. A card that I noticed in your Magic Online article was Retrofitter Foundry. That card is also pretty powerful.
Yeah, I really like Retrofitter. It kind of works with the Zerda. It's not the best for this deck though, because you kind of want the Retrofitter when you have maybe Gaia's Cradle or Tolarian Academy, because then you're getting like additional value for creating the 1/1s, or like a Skull Clamp. It's not necessarily a standalone card, even though it is quite good. Like if you're just sinking mana into it, it is
Oh,
functional.
this is exciting too. Zealous Conscripts is a very, very powerful card in the cube with a lot of potential here. But Reid, again, showing some discipline here, opting for something like the Mana Confluence instead. What are
I
some of the
like it.
considerations? You like it? Okay, yeah. Why would you pick the Confluence over something as powerful as Conscripts?
These decks tend to be kind of mana hungry, especially if you wind up uh like if you don't see the 1-drops in white, you need to take the red 1-drops, because these decks tend to want to just curve out every game. If you're playing Thalia, you want to just like have a creature every turn and try to snowball an advantage. And if you're doing that, you definitely need to have enough sources to cast your 1-drops, because if you're playing maybe 7 sources and then you need to cast your 1-drop on turn 1, it's going to create mulligan situations.
Okay. F's in the chat for the Cosmic Rebirth. Every time I see this in a pack, I am going to call it out, just so you know. It's yeah.
One of these days we'll find a strip mine drafter who will take it.
Yes, there you. Now you're speaking my language. Maybe we just throw in a couple counter spells in there, and it's perfect. All right, so Scrubland is the pick here. Again, this one, I don't know if we're ever actually going to play it like black cards in this deck, are
Well, it's
we?
more fixing for the leyline binding at worst.
Yep, and gives you options too.
Yeah, with the fetch land and the mana confluence, if we find a strong black card like Thoughtseize, or well, I guess we already passed Reanimate and Necromancy, but maybe Animate Dead, it opens those doors. Or Mind Twist would be another good one.
Oh, this is an
Council's Judgment, very solid.
Yeah, this is an interesting card. Torsten, the founder of Benalia, doesn't really slot into this deck the way it's building, but I think that is a really cool card.
Yeah, Torsten is great because it's castable, and then it also is really good with Flash, Sneak Attack through the Breach, Reanimate.
Yeah. But the way this list is playing out, I have to imagine, yeah, Council's Judgment is highlighted here, the reserved card.
We don't want to have 7 mana in play. We
Yes.
want the game to be over by then.
Yeah. This pack is a little bit weak in terms of options. I'm kind of curious when it rolls around what we'll see here.
Probably not much.
Okay.
This pack, on the other hand, we could wheel any of these white cards and be happy.
Yeah. How do you feel about so obviously like Student of Warfare? Regal Bunnicorn is kind of interesting. I've always imagined this mono white aggro deck to be kind of like you put creatures into play, but what makes them powerful is their abilities. Regal Bunnicorn is more of that Tarmogoyf styled card. It is a heavy hitter, but it's a vanilla creature at the end of the day. So does that kind of slot into this deck with the way things are going right now?
Not exactly, but I think it would be a good card to wheel, and we'd be happy to get it. If you have something like Thraben Inspector and Blade Splicer on either side of it on the curve, it can get really big really fast. So I think that's where it really shines, is when you're getting a couple game objects out of your cheap cards.
Okay. No white cards here. Thundermaw Hellkite is the red card of choice, but
Cauldron
honestly,
Complete is a white card because it pairs with Stoneforge Mystic.
all right, the secret text there, right? So we'll be looking for we also passed a Batter Skull too, so maybe that comes around if we're like super lucky, and then we could have like a nice little Stoneforge Mystic packet.
Yeah, that's one thing I always try to keep an eye out for when I'm drafting white, is if you see late Cauldron Completes like this or late Batter Skulls, you can kind of count on the fact that Stoneforge has not been opened yet, because if it had, somebody would be taking those cards.
All right. Well, in this pack, we have a card like Char, which is, consistent but low power, Virtue of Loyalty. This one seems really interesting. Talk to me about this card.
It's a great card. It lets you pass with your mana up, which isn't as important in this deck as it would be if you were playing like blue white, for example, with counter magic. But it's nice to have instant threats, especially if you're against counter magic. You can pass instead of playing into it. And
Yeah.
then the backside is a really nice way of adding like anthem effects to the cube, where cards like Crusade or Glorious Anthem, which years and years ago used to be pretty good, have just fallen to the wayside. So now it's good to have like that effect, but stapled onto a card that is more playable.
Yep. I also just like that it's pretty versatile. So like if you're early in the game, it does something. Late in the game, it does something. Which is the hallmark of like just like good deck building. You want that sort of flexibility.
Okay, so I'm gonna go a little deep here. I see the Auriok Salvagers. We already got the Zerda. If we just like taken that Ballista, we could take the Salvagers here and then like look for Lion's Eye Diamond angles for the infinite mana combo. It's not necessarily something that you'd want to do, and I'm not criticizing Reid for drafting this
Yes.
way. I just like to I'm always trying to open myself up to doing the busted things. And
Fair
so if
enough.
it's like low opportunity cost to pick up those things, like they're
You and I we draft alike. I like to do the broken vintage kind of things in Vintage Cube. And I mean, I think these sort of strategies are also just very good. Don't get me wrong by any means. Student of Warfare going to round out the pick. Also, just want to give a shout out to, I think we also got Ember's Shieldbreaker earlier, which is nice. Just having some sort of main deckable artifact destruction is pretty good. But then we did get some of those one drops to sort of make our curve pretty good here. And yeah, I mean this is no contest, right?
oh yeah, absolutely mana crypt. The other thing that I want to circle back to is having cards like Ember Shieldbreaker and Student of Warfare. Suddenly all of these picks that Reid has spent on lands are like they're rewarding because you can play the Student of Warfare, you can play the Shieldbreaker, you can level up the student without losing tempo.
Yeah. One thing that was also kind of exciting to me, just sort of like watching how this draft originally started, Reid was like, very highly picking removal spells. We saw like, Swords to Plowshares over Tinker. We got the Palace Jailer. Get Lost was another critical option. I think for me, the key moment was when we took the Unexpectedly Absent. And now we're pivoting back into this more aggressive style that is, more of a hallmark to the aggro strategies.
Solitude is like maybe the best white card, so I feel
Yeah.
like he's probably gonna take that.
Yeah, I saw a cube tier list of cards that were overperforming. Solitude was like maybe at the top of the ladder there. I think the flexibility of this being a 0 or 5 mana spell makes this absurdly incredible. I mean, it is literally one of the most powerful cards in Modern. So seeing this be the pick here, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll bail you out of a bad spot, and it will push your advantage if you're ahead. So it just like plays on all levels.
Okay, interesting
Ooh,
here.
good
Restoration
choices
is
in this pack.
yeah.
Can't
And
really go
Reid
wrong.
Reid immediately moves to the Luminarch Aspirant here. Angel caught my eye, but thinking about it a little bit more, we don't really have too many great targets to blink here. So
I'm a Samwise fan myself. We have 2 fetch lands. I'm just gonna Samwise and get the value.
okay, you also get Solitude value with Samwise too, right?
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so
Good
Samwise actually
call
looks
out.
really clean here.
But, I mean, I don't hate Luminar Aspirant either. This card will snowball, which is what we're trying to do, so
Yeah.
ooh, Path. What a treat.
Yep. Other cards here that are in color. I think so. Clearly, I think at this point, Reid is trying to stay like mono white if possible here. So, Figure of Destiny, Staff of the Storyteller is kind of cool. Synergizes with the fourth Erlingas that we picked up earlier. Also, the Virtue of Loyalty.
Good with the Retrofitter Foundry we passed as well, if those end up together.
Okay. Yeah. Dude,
That's
I
like the
like
classic
these.
vintage combo.
I like these micro synergies. It's just like every card that you see, you're like, oh yeah, this works with that, and it's kind of cool here. How do
I
you
think
feel
that
about
this Figure of Destiny is going to table, and I would slam dunk the Path to Exile.
Path? Okay, it's interesting because now it's like if I'm in Reed's thinking about this from Reed's POV, we need to balance like the amount of aggressive threats we have just in general versus like if you look at our removal count, right? It's pretty high. We've got what the swords, the solitude, the jailer, the get lost, the absent, the judgment. There's a lot. So I understand Reed's position here, but yeah, Path to Exile also speaks to me.
I think that either of those cards had potential to wheel, so if we take the Path, we're gonna get either the Staff or the
Okay,
Figure. I don't think that both of them are gonna get taken, so I feel like we could have just taken the Path there.
gotcha. What
Um,
Wedding Announcement's a pretty solid card. I've been watching a lot of like Pioneer and Standard lately, and this card has sort of just been dominant.
Yeah, I love Wedding Announcement. I would be hard pressed to pass Bone Crusher and Winds of Abandon. I think that both of those cards are extremely premium, whereas Wedding Announcement is a good card, but it's just like a 3-mana filler.
Okay, gotcha.
I think that Bone Crusher Giant is just such a ooh, here's the Heliod if we'd taken that Triskelion and Ballista, but that ship has sailed.
All right, other cards here that are interesting. Let's see. You've got Jetmir's Garden. I mean, that's a mana source. We just take the Heliod for fun, anyways. Might as well.
I think the Jetmir's Garden is a better pick. We're never gonna play the Heliod because both the cards that we'd want with it have gone. I
Okay.
think another thing notable though is that like we were passing a almost last pick Torsten last pack, and now there's a flash going around the table. I would be worried about those cards ending up in the same spot, even though they are going different directions.
Yeah, here's like turn 2, 7 points of power, albeit in the form of 1/1s, but that's still like quite incredible. And there it is. Okay, this card is definitely like what we're looking for, right? The Thraben
Yes.
Inspector.
Yeah. Inspector Thraben is just so good. We get the Bunnycorn if it wheels here is the perfect curve out. You go Thraben, Bunnycorn, maybe throw a Mana Crypt down,
Yeah.
then your Lingus and attack for 20 on whatever turn 4 maybe.
I was
Ooh,
watching
Adeline.
yeah, Adeline is pretty good too. I was watching Weekly MTG today, and I think there's a new variant of Thraben Inspector for
Oh, yeah.
the new murder mystery set that's coming out, and I'm quite excited about this. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Lots of powerful cards coming around late here. Sneak Attack. I think we can sort of maybe rest easy now because we've seen the Sneak Attack go late. We've seen the Flash go late. It's unlikely that anybody really wants those cards because it's kind of risky to pass them unless you're just so confident that they're going to table to you like they are.
Yeah, Reid's Duke, by the way, is coming out. I think it's coming out very well together. I mean, you've got a lot of the key components here. You got Mana Crypt for some acceleration if you need it. I like that he took the Bonfire. That's very on point.
Yeah, the Shockland tabling there is just a great sign that we've picked the right lane. Like
Yeah,
nobody's interested in taking a Shockland. Those are super high picks usually, especially late in the pack when everybody's looking for mana fixing.
and that does kind of reward some of those critical decisions where we passed scary cards like the Tinker, like the Gristlebrand, for example. You know, we have a direction, and it's like we're on the highway right now, right? We're speeding on the highway, so.
Restoration's a nice pickup. I think between Restoration and Touch the Spirit Realm, they're basically doing the same things, and because we have a pretty good removal suite, the Restoration Angel's probably just better.
Okay.
I like it because we have Palace Jailer, Solitude, Thraben Inspector. It's going to often, pay for itself on casting.
Nothing too exciting from this pack. I mean, we're closing out here, so we're
Well,
just.
Fast Bond is, like, maybe the best green card in the cube, so seeing it go this late is, certainly interesting. There's a lot of, strategies that aren't being tapped into, it seems.
I'm just checking my notes here. Luis isn't in this draft, right?
Yeah, you would not see the Fast Bond if Luis was in the draft, that's for sure.
A very late inspiring Vantage. Okay, that's pretty good. And if you look at Reed's deck right now, I mean, honestly, let's talk about the colors here, right? So Heliod finally comes all the way around. He's done a very good job at just drafting a mostly, white based deck, and his mana is kind of pristine here. Um, Okay, so this is the final product here. I mean, and it looks pretty good. Got a healthy mana base here. Got a very low curve, and then we got some very powerful top end stuff here. I am kind of curious to see what some of the other decks are in this pod as well. But I mean, how would you rate this deck on a scale of 1 to 10?
Um, it's a very solid deck. I think that I have trouble, like, rating these mono white decks as they, the way that they perform tends to be determined by what you play against rather than how good your deck is because they're all kind of doing the same thing. They're just putting a lot of power into play early and then hoping to stumble the opponent. So they do well against decks that don't have interaction, and they tend to underperform versus decks that are just like putting out a ton of mid-range threats and getting in the way with like 2-for-1 value.